So CMAT's just around the corner, and if you're looking to take this exam, make sure to avoid these 5 common mistakes that students make, because these could cost you quite a few marks. Now stay tuned till the end of the video, because we'll be covering one additional error which some students also end up making. So the first common error which students make is, now this is important because the instructions or the requirements for each exam are a little different. In CMAT, for instance, you don't just stick your photograph, you need to carry an extra photograph. You need to also put your left thumb impression on the admit card before you reach the center, and you need to carry your own pen, unlike most exams. So these are just some of the things you might miss out. Make sure to read the entire instructions. We've put the link to the instructions in the description of the video. So please go through it beforehand itself, so that on the day of the exam, you're quite clear and your focus is entirely on getting through the exam and doing your very best. The second error which you might make is, now CMAT has been changing their format almost every 2 or 3 years. So for example, in 2020, CMAT brought in this extra section of innovation and entrepreneurship. Before that, they had 4 sections, but now they have these 5 sections. So make sure that you've prepared for all of the sections. There's a free mock at mockat.com. The link again is in the description. So you can register and take it just to make sure that you're clear with the format. Now that the basics are out of the way, let's look into the exam itself and how you can maximize your scores and what are the common errors which could hinder you there, which you must avoid. So the third error which students sometimes make is, when it comes to CMAT, a lot of the B schools that accept the CMAT score don't consider sectional cutoffs. When that is the case, you don't need to score a minimum in each section. You need to do your very best and you need to get the highest overall marks possible. So if Quant DI is your strength, please make sure and finish all of the questions there. If verbal ability and language is your strength, make sure you're focusing on that. If you're really good in GK, static GK and all of that, then that should be your primary focus. So make sure that you're maximizing your score if you're particularly looking for the B schools which are not looking at the sectional cutoffs. The fourth error that students make comes from a lack of planning and perhaps not taking too many CMAT mocks. Now, what you need to do is, you need to have a strategy for each section and maximize your strengths within that section. For example, when it comes to Quant and DI, make sure that you know arithmetic in and out, because that's where you get the most questions from. Similarly, when we look at GK, static GK and questions on India are the ones which typically have a lion's share. So that again is something which you should know as much as possible, or that's where you should focus more time. Similarly, in LR, arrangements is what you need to focus on in your prep, because you will have a chunk of questions there looking at the past papers. For verbal, I'd suggest a slightly different strategy. While of course you need to do RCs and much of the questions will be from RCs, one thing which you should definitely have focused on is grammar. And that's because you'll get a few questions in grammar. These can be solved much quicker and these can be high scorers provided your concepts are right. So make sure that you're focusing on these key aspects. The last tactical error which students can make is this. And this again could come from the fact that you might not have looked in depth into CMAT and might have just prepared all of the topics. Now, we've given a recommended timeline that you can take for each section to maximize your overall score, but you can of course play around with it. If there are some parts which are your strengths, you could either look to take a little extra time there so that you're solving all of the questions, or if you're able to quickly solve questions, for example, if you're very good at calculations, you're good at mental maths, you might be able to finish the Quant DI section a little faster than others. So in that case, you can actually spend a little less time on what is your strength. Again, you can use the free mock at mockat.com, link in the description, and make sure that you validated your strategy. So avoid these 5 errors and make sure that you boost your score in CMAT as much as possible. And now for the bonus error. For a lot of students, they start by taking CAT, NMAT, SNAP, XAT, some of these exams, and if unfortunately the exams don't go well, then they start looking at CMAT as a lifeline. They start thinking of CMAT as, this is my last chance. We've had many people come up to us and ask us saying that, you know what, I didn't get calls from IIMs, I didn't get calls from such and such places, or I messed up my interviews, and now I have to clear CMAT and I have to get in this year, right? Now, while some of you might be in a situation where you have to get in this year, what this unfortunately does is it'll add up a lot of stress and perhaps even panic during the exam. So avoid that. Look at CMAT as just one more exam that you're taking. And in a worst case scenario, CAT is in about 7 or 8 months, and you can always look to take it again. You might think that with a second attempt, you're wasting a year. But if this is not your best preparation, if you've just prepared maybe for a few months and you're not getting through a B school that is at your potential, you might actually be saving yourself a few years if you give it one more year. Because the better the B school that you get to, the better the learning, the better your peers, and the higher the designation and the better the job that you take up. So don't add stress and don't think of this as your last exam. Look at it as one exam. If for some reason it doesn't go as well as we'd hoped, then CAT is there in another 7 or 8 months. There's a whole bunch of other exams. You owe it to yourself to give it your best shot, because the B school that you get through and the learning that you get is going to have a massive impact on the rest of your career for the next few decades, whether you're looking to join a company or start your own company. So have this mindset and you'll find that you'll actually end up scoring better in CMAT as well, because you'll be less stressed about it. If you have any other questions or any doubts, please put it up in the comments below and we'll answer these. Definitely go through the instructions and the free mock that's there in the description. And once the exam is done, put up your comments as well of how it went, and let's also hear about all your experiences. So all the very best and go crush it.